Behind every empire lies a secret, and Christine Caldwell just uncovered the one that could destroy everything she built. When the man she trusted and the family she loved betray her most ruthlessly, Christine isn't just fighting to save her. Legacy. She's preparing a war they'll never see coming. Christine Caldwell had always been the silent architect of her family's success. Behind every milestone, every trophy of business conquest, and every smiling press photo stood Christine, the poised and powerful force that few recognized but everyone benefited from. Her husband, King Walsh, the charismatic face of their empire, often took the spotlight, but it was Christine's quiet intelligence and meticulous planning that steered their fortune. Their marriage had once been a beautiful partnership, built on trust, ambition, and a shared vision. They met during their second year at Wharton Business School, drawn together by mutual competitiveness and an insatiable hunger for excellence. Christine had been the top of her class, precise and methodical, while King exuded confidence, charm, and the type of natural magnetism that opened doors before he even knocked. They were inseparable by the time they graduated. Their first venture was a modest but ambitious real estate flip in Brooklyn, a derelict brownstone they renovated by hand, taking turns caulking floors and drafting business models late into the night. Christine handled the logistics, market, analysis, and legal structure. King handled the investors and the sale. They doubled their money in 6 months. That success birthed Walsh Enterprises. From there, they scaled fast construction, hospitality, media, and even luxury retail. Christine designed the company's operating frameworks, hiring practices, and expansion algorithms. She worked 12-hour days behind closed doors, turning chaos into systems, spreadsheets into skyscrapers. But it was King's face on the cover of Fortune. King's laugh echoed through fundraisers. King's name lit up interviews. Christine didn't mind, at first. She preferred the shadows. The thrill wasn't in attention. It was in achievement. But power, she learned, doesn't just reveal character, it distorts it. As the years went by, King started to change. His hunger for applause grew ravenous. He no longer cared about the mechanics of the empire. He only cared about how it made him look. The man who once reviewed budgets at midnight now shrugged off major investments like they were poker chips. He traveled constantly, never sharing itineraries. Their once lively dinners turned into brief check-ins. And Christine, ever the rationalist, kept the machine running, even as her heart began to rust. The first real red flag wasn't even the money. It was a woman's perfume on one of King's cashmere scarves, a scent she didn't recognize. Christine didn't panic. She cataloged it mentally and moved on. But then came the odd phone call late at night. The strange hesitation when she asked about a missing investment file. A cold detachment that began to define his voice. The moment that shifted everything was a charge on their Amex Black, $18,000 at Luminera in Miami. Christine hadn't been to Miami in months. When she questioned King, he barely flinched. "Oh, just a client gift," he'd said, tossing the receipt onto her desk as if it were lint. But Christine's instincts, sharp, honed, unfailing, tingled. She began digging. Christine wasn't just a wife, she was a strategist, a master at parsing data and spotting patterns. Late into the nights, when King was away on his so-called business trips, she combed through financial statements. She cross-checked property records, vendor payments, even staff expenses. And with each discovery, the knot in her stomach grew tighter. She found transfers, small at first, masked, as vendor payments, but funneled into offshore accounts. She traced them to shell companies tied to a single name, Lindsay Ferris. The name tugged at a distant thread in her memory. A marketing consultant from 6 years ago, young, ambitious, always too eager. Christine remembered her hovering near King, offering ideas he pretended to admire. She'd written her off as harmless back then. She had been wrong. Christine's mind raced. Every transaction, every redirect, every smirk King gave her in recent months now made sense. But she needed evidence, real evidence. That's when she thought of Enzo Serrano. Enzo had been a trusted classmate during her MBA years. Now he was a forensic accountant with a reputation for solving corporate crimes that never made the headlines. The kind of guy who knew how to operate. In silence. She reached out through an encrypted email. 2 days later, they met in a quiet cafe on the Upper East Side. He listened without interruption as she laid out her findings. Within a week, Enzo was in. He bypassed encrypted archives, flagged false vendors, and uncovered metadata buried beneath years of financial layering. He found that King had been slowly bleeding Walsh Enterprises for over 3 years. The Luminera boutique wasn't just a vanity project. It was owned outright by Lindsay Ferris. Properties in Lisbon, Paris, and Dubai bought under Lindsay's name using Walsh funds. Christine's name had been removed from several joint investments, but the most staggering betrayal came from someone even closer. Buried deep within Enzo's secured files was a recording, audio pulled from a backup server King had tried to delete. It was Christine's mother, Cynthia Caldwell, speaking with King. "I'm telling you," Cynthia said coolly, "once we get Christine out of the picture, you'll have full control. I'll handle the trust transition quietly. She's sentimental, not strategic. She won't even see it coming." Christine dropped the tablet. Her mother, the same woman who coached her for debates, who ironed her first blazer before her Harvard interview, who baked her lemon bars when she landed her first internship, had conspired against her, had chosen her charming son-in-law over her flesh and blood. That night, Christine sat in her study until the sun bled into the sky. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She calculated. Let them think she was sentimental. Let them think she was blind. That was their mistake. Over the next 2 weeks, she worked with Enzo in secrecy. They created a dossier, 280 pages of ledgers, contracts, voice transcripts, time-stamped messages, and bank wire histories. She hired a private investigator, ex-FBI, to shadow Lindsay and gather evidence of fraud. Her home was retrofitted with legal-grade surveillance to catch any new betrayals. Then, Christine planned a dinner. To the outside world, it was a celebration. Her daughter Isabel's acceptance into Yale. Invitations went out to family members, executives, board trustees, the family's legal advisor, and even Cynthia. King's name glittered on the menu cards. The setting was her penthouse's grand dining hall, bathed in golden candlelight and decorated with white orchids, her mother's favorite. On the surface, it would look like a proud mother honoring her child. In reality, it was a war table. Christine was the general, and her enemies were walking straight into the trap. That night, as she adjusted her emerald earrings and looked in the mirror, she whispered to her reflection, "Let them enjoy their last night of illusion." The queen wasn't retreating. She was preparing for war. The night of the dinner arrived with theatrical perfection. Christine had planned every detail with the precision of a tactician preparing for a public coup. The penthouse sparkled, the lighting just soft enough to make everyone feel special, but not enough to mask the undercurrent of tension she'd so artfully embedded in the guest list. Crystal glasses chimed as servers in black ties poured vintage champagne. A string quartet played softly near the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city, a city built partially on her backbone and now being stolen, brick by those she trusted most. Christine wore a dark emerald gown, a deliberate choice. Green, the color of ambition and money, but also envy and betrayal. Her hair was pulled into a chignon, her expression regal and unreadable. She was every bit the gracious hostess, gliding through the room, greeting guests, smiling just enough. Her daughter Isabel, radiant in a navy cocktail dress, mingled effortlessly with family friends and board members. King arrived late, naturally. He swept into the room like royalty, his arm around Cynthia Caldwell, Christine's mother. They made a striking pair, King in a charcoal Armani suit, Cynthia in a deep burgundy gown. Christine watched them from across the room, a flute of champagne in hand, her lips curled into a smile that never touched her eyes. "Darling," King said, kissing her cheek, "the place looks magnificent, just like old times." "Indeed," Christine replied. "Only this time I planned every inch of it myself." He laughed, mistaking her meaning. "Always the mastermind." Cynthia stepped in, her voice syrupy. "You've outdone yourself, Christine. Isabel must be thrilled." She is. Yale was always her dream, and unlike some dreams, hers wasn't built on stolen trust funds. Cynthia blinked. Christine moved away, letting her words simmer in their ears. Dinner was served on a custom 12-seat mahogany table, imported from Italy. Each course was prepared by a Michelin-starred chef. King played the charming patriarch, clinking glasses, offering toasts, reveling in the attention. He was in his element, until dessert arrived. Christine stood up, tapping her glass. "Before we bring out the soufflé," she said, her voice crisp and commanding, "I'd like to share a gift with my family, a moment of transparency and gratitude." The lights dimmed. A large screen descended behind her. Confused glances floated across the table. King's smile froze. Christine nodded to her assistant. The screen flickered to life. The first slide was a flowchart, simple lines showing shell companies linked to Lindsay Ferris. Then came transaction logs, dates, amounts, offshore accounts. Voice recordings followed, including the one between Cynthia and King. "I'm telling you, once we get Christine out of the picture..." A gasp cut through the air. Cynthia's wine glass tipped and shattered on the floor. King stood up, his face pale. "Christine, what the hell is this?" She met his eyes with icy calm. "It's a reckoning. You took my company. You took my trust. You even tried to take my identity. Tonight, I'm reclaiming all of it." Board members looked around uncomfortably. Lawyers at the table opened folders quietly passed to them by Christine's assistant. They contained notarized affidavits, forensic audits, and resignation letters, one from King, forged with his signature using a digital trail he had created and failed to erase. Another from Cynthia, tied to breaches of the family trust. Isabel stood beside her mother, trembling but strong. "Mom, is all this true? Did they really?" Christine took her hand. "Yes, and they're going to pay for it. Not with jail time, though that's possible, but with something worse. Irrelevance." King's voice cracked. "You can't do this. The board will never—" "The board," Christine interrupted, "received their versions of this evidence hours ago. As of this moment, you've been unanimously voted out. Walsh Enterprises has appointed me interim CEO until the next vote. As for you, Cynthia, your name has been removed from Isabel's education trust. She doesn't need traders' funding. Her future." Cynthia tried to speak, but the words failed. Her face collapsed into itself. Christine turned to the guests. "I apologize for the abrupt turn of events, but I felt it necessary that the truth be served alongside dessert. Feel free to stay, there's champagne and a beautiful skyline, but the wolves at this table are no longer welcome in this den." Security quietly appeared. King, shaking, tried to assert his authority. "You think this is over? You think you've won?" Christine stepped closer, her voice low. "You lost the moment you underestimated me." They were escorted out, Cynthia's heels clicking, against marble like nails in a coffin. The room exhaled. Silence fell. Then applause, slow, uncertain at first, but it spread. Board members nodded. Isabel hugged her mother tightly. Christine finally sat down, the screen now showing a slideshow of Isabel's childhood photos. She raised her glass. "To new beginnings." The guests toasted. Outside the penthouse, the city pulsed with life. Inside, Christine Caldwell reclaimed her throne, not in anger, but in triumph. The war was not just won. It was public, and she had made sure the world would never forget who built the empire. The city outside Christine's penthouse was a blur of neon lights and ceaseless traffic. A world that moved fast, indifferent to the personal storms unfolding. In glass towers. Inside, the quiet tension was palpable. 2 weeks had passed since the explosive dinner. Walsh Enterprises was under a forensic audit led by Enzo Serrano and an external legal team. King Walsh was isolated, his access to company resources cut off. Cynthia Caldwell remained publicly silent, though rumors swirled in the media about internal family conflicts and corporate sabotage. Christine had spent these days in a relentless cycle of meetings, legal briefings, and carefully choreographed public relations maneuvers. Every press release was a calculated step to regain trust in the company, to reassure shareholders and clients that Walsh Enterprises was stable, and most importantly, under her control. But one loose end gnawed at her: Lindsay Ferris. The woman had been the financial conduit for years, the mask behind which King siphoned money, bought properties, and laundered funds. Christine knew Lindsay was more than an opportunist. She was a threat who still held pieces of the puzzle that could unravel everything. Christine's decision was clear. She would confront Lindsay herself. The location was a minimalist loft in Soho, owned by Lindsay but rarely used as a residence. The space was cold, sleek, designed more for meetings than comfort. White marble floors, steel fixtures, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Lower East Side. Christine arrived just before noon. She was dressed in tailored black slacks and a white silk blouse, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with purpose. Lindsay was already there, standing by the expansive window, arms crossed, dressed, casually in designer jeans and a loose top. She turned slowly, a faint, practiced smile on her lips. "Well, Christine," Lindsay said, voice smooth like silk over steel. "I was wondering when you'd come knocking." Christine took a steadying breath and closed the door behind her. "Let's not play games, Lindsay," she said. "I know what you've done. The offshore accounts, the properties in Lisbon, Dubai, and Paris, the fake vendor contracts, the lies." Lindsay tilted her head slightly, as if appraising a curious object. "You have quite the dossier, I hear." Christine nodded. "Enough to ruin you." Lindsay laughed softly. "And here I thought you were the quiet mastermind behind the empire. But no, you're the storm that finally blew the house down." Christine's jaw tightened. "This isn't about storms. It's about justice." Lindsay's smile faded. "Justice? You mean your version of it?" "Christine, you should know. King didn't do this alone. He had me and others. And you? You were the one who trusted him." "That's where you're wrong," Christine said quietly. "I never trusted him. Not anymore." Lindsay took a step closer. "So, what now? You're going to destroy me? Throw me to the wolves?" Christine met her gaze unflinchingly. "I'm going to make sure the truth comes out. That everyone who played a part pays the price. But I'm also going to make sure Walsh Enterprises survives, stronger, cleaner, and under my leadership." Lindsay laughed again, but there was a brittle edge to it. "You think you can do that? Without me?" Christine pulled a tablet from her bag and tapped a file. A photo appeared on the screen. Lindsay meeting with a known money laundering intermediary in a discreet European cafe. "This is just the start," Christine said. "We have evidence, recordings, and witness statements. You're done." Lindsay's eyes flickered, and for a moment, Christine saw a crack in the armor. But then Lindsay smiled, a hard, dangerous smile. "You think you're untouchable now? But I have cards to play too." Christine raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" Lindsay stepped back, thoughtful. "Let's just say I have information that might interest your legal team, and maybe the media, and maybe certain government agencies." Christine didn't flinch. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Lindsay said, pulling a slim envelope from a hidden pocket and sliding it across the glass table. "Open it, and decide for yourself." Christine hesitated for less than a second before picking it up. Inside were documents, emails, contracts, and bank statements, not just about King and Lindsay, but implicating several board members and a few high-ranking city officials. Christine's mind raced. This wasn't just a simple corporate betrayal. It was a web of corruption and bribery that ran deeper than she had imagined. Lindsay watched her carefully. "Here's the deal," Lindsay said. "You take me down and I burn it all to the ground with you. But if you work with me, I can help you clean house completely. I can help you turn this mess into something untouchable." Christine weighed the offer. It was tempting and dangerous. "You want a deal?" Lindsay nodded. "A partnership. I give you everything I have, and you protect me from the fallout." Christine's heart pounded. Could she trust Lindsay? Could she afford not to? The negotiation stretched for hours. Lines were drawn, trust was tested, and grudging respect flickered between two women bound by ambition, betrayal, and survival. In the end, Christine agreed to protect Lindsay from prosecution in exchange for full disclosure of all illicit activities and help in securing clean audits and legal immunity for key players who cooperated. It was a bitter pill, but a necessary one. Over the following weeks, the empire transformed. With Lindsay's cooperation, Christine dismantled corrupt contracts, replaced compromised board members, and restored investor confidence. The media narrative shifted, painting Christine as a hero restoring order from chaos. King was left to fight legal battles alone, facing criminal investigations and personal ruin. Cynthia, broken and isolated, retreated from the public eye. And Christine? She stood at the helm, not as the shadow behind the throne, but as the undisputed queen of Walsh Enterprises. That night, alone in her office, Christine allowed herself a moment of quiet. She pulled out an old photo from her desk drawer, herself, and King on their graduation day, young and hopeful, full of dreams. Her fingers traced the image softly. She whispered, "We lost our way." But now the future was hers to write, and this time, she would make sure every word counted. The first light of dawn crept softly over Manhattan's skyline, brushing the tops of skyscrapers with pale gold. Inside her corner office, Christine Caldwell stood silently before the floor-to-ceiling windows, a solitary figure framed by the city's awakening bustle. The city that had tested her, broken her, and ultimately made her stronger. Months had passed since the night of the fateful dinner, since the web of betrayal unraveled into a public spectacle that shook the foundations of Walsh Enterprises. The A company had weathered the storm, scarred but unbroken. And Christine, once the silent architect, had become the undeniable force behind its revival. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman transformed. The shadows under her eyes spoke of sleepless nights and relentless battles fought in courtrooms and boardrooms. But her posture was straighter now, her gaze sharper, and the quiet fire in her eyes burned brighter than ever before. She turned away from the window and walked slowly to her desk, where a fresh stack of reports awaited her review. But before she sat, her phone buzzed. A message from Isabel. "Mom, just wanted to say I'm proud of you. Yale is amazing, but you're my real inspiration." Christine smiled, a rare softness breaking through the armor. Isabel, her daughter, had been her anchor through the chaos, the reason she fought so fiercely, not just for power or money, but for legacy and truth. The door opened quietly behind her. Enzo Serrano stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Morning," he said, setting one down. "Big day?" Christine nodded, accepting the cup. "Always." Enzo leaned against the doorframe, his expression thoughtful. "You did something few could," he said. "You turned a toxic situation into a chance to rebuild. Not just the company, but trust. People are watching, Christine. You're a beacon." "Now!" She looked at him, the faintest hint of a smile playing on her lips. "A beacon, huh? Feels more like a lighthouse battered by storms. But if I can guide even one ship to safety, maybe it's enough." Enzo smiled warmly. "It's more than enough." The months ahead were not without challenges. Walsh Enterprises had to navigate regulatory scrutiny, shareholder doubts, and a bruised public image. But Christine's steady leadership and transparency began to restore confidence. The boardroom shifted, new faces replaced the corrupt, and a fresh corporate culture rooted in ethics and innovation took root. Christine also made peace with the ghosts of the past. Cynthia Caldwell, her mother, had sought forgiveness, a fragile attempt to bridge the chasm their betrayal had created. Christine listened but chose to keep her distance. Some wounds healed slowly, and some bridges were better left uncrossed. King Walsh faced legal consequences, his empire crumbling without the safety net of deception. Christine refused to gloat. Her victory was not in destruction, but in justice. 1. Crisp autumn evening, Christine attended a gala honoring women leaders in business. The crowd was filled with admirers, journalists, and executives eager to hear her speak. As she took the stage, Christine's thoughts briefly flashed to her younger self. The ambitious student who once believed love and business could be the same. She cleared her throat and began, voice steady and clear. Leadership is not about being in the spotlight. It's about integrity in the shadows, strength when no one's watching, and courage to stand for what is right, even when it's hard. The audience erupted in applause. After the event, as she mingled, a young woman approached hesitantly. "Ms. Caldwell," she said, eyes shining with admiration. "Your story? It gives me hope. That even when life breaks you, you can rebuild stronger. Christine reached out, squeezing the woman's hand. Thank you. That means more than you know. Back in her office late that night, Christine sat down at her desk and opened a new document. A proposal for a foundation dedicated to supporting young women in business, entrepreneurship, and leadership. She typed the title carefully. The Ore. Christine Caldwell Legacy Fund. Because her fight had never been just about reclaiming what was hers. It was about paving a path for others to rise without fear, to lead without compromise. She paused and smiled softly to herself. The queen was not just prepared for war anymore. She was ready to build a kingdom,